Hi there. I'm very excited about my guest, but before I get to my guest, I have a little message from our sponsor. The Wellness Company has answers for all of your health needs. They've stood strong against the and in fact, if you have taken the they have spike support. This is a fantastic product. It's even good if you're just working around people who are shedding. You know what I'm talking about. They have this, they have medical emergency kits, they have all kinds of things. We know that there looks like there's going to be something else, another wave coming of something, and the Wellness Company has you covered. So go to the link below, use the code SORBO for 10% off. Thanks. And welcome to the Sam Sorbo Show. So my guest now is Theresa Sidebotham. She assists organizations in the United States and also internationally with a special focus on employment law, religious and nonprofit law, but also child safety. So she advises on numerous misconduct investigations. And she's the founder of Telios Law. And she's here to talk about these recent comments by Senator Kennedy, who made Democrats squirm on the floor of the Senate because he actually quoted from some children's literature, which included terms like dildo and some other really nasty pornographic imagery, let's say, that is in the children's books in our schools. So welcome to the program, Theresa.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
So where does this, where do we stand with all of this? I mean, it's not appropriate content, but what can we possibly do about it?
Well, I think the first thing that we need to do is frame it correctly. So it's not about book banning. It's not even about whether you're liberal or conservative, although, obviously that plays into the discussion. What it's really about is whether we're harming children. So when kids get exposed to sexually inappropriate material, and I don't really care what genre of sexually inappropriate material it is, it causes harm. And there's quite a bit of research backing that up. So if we
There are also people who argue that it doesn't cause harm. I mean, look, part of the reason that we have sex ed in the classroom today, and by the way, just to clarify, I'm totally on your side, but I'm going to try to present a little bit of an argument for the sake of the discussion. The one of the researchers who did research on infants and discovered that infants could actually climax sexually, etc., which to me is research that is actually child abuse, but he got away with it. And he is part of the reason that we have sex ed in the classroom. So there are people out there who firmly believe that children are sexual beings and should be encouraged to have sex as young as birth. I mean, seriously, these people will go all the way back to the womb if they could.
I agree. So there certainly are people who argue that sexually abusing children is just fine. And that's what that researcher did in his research. And there is thankfully still a pretty small minority of people who say it's fine to sexually abuse children as long as there's some sort of hypothetical consent, which of course babies can't give. So I work all the time in my practice. I do investigations. I talk to adults who are sexually abused as children. And of your listeners, about 25% of the women and about 1 in 6 of the men experienced that by the time they were young adults. I hear these people talking about the sexual abuse. They were harmed. Some people were harmed so much that their entire lives they've never recovered from it. And this kind of trash, I won't dignify by calling children's literature, this is the kind of thing that pedophiles use to soften up kids, to groom them in order to sexually abuse them. And what you said is perfect, that they're arguing that it's okay to sexually abuse kids, and therefore it's okay to expose them to sexually explicit material. So that's the first place. Where do we stand on that?
Right. And I think that if you, here's where I'll tell you where I stand. Okay. If this is the stated position of the school board, that it's questionable whether this literature should or shouldn't be in the classroom, and probably should be in the classroom, then my child does not belong in your classroom.
You bet. And as for the school board, vote those puppies out. But parents across the country, whether liberal or conservative, who don't want their children having intercourse early, don't want them engaging in high risk sexual behavior, don't want their daughters to wind up with eating disorders because they feel objectified by the messages they're getting. Those
Or
parents,
sexually transmitted diseases,
or right,
or pregnancy.
or child on child abuse, which goes way up when kids are exposed to this. So all people of good sense who don't want to see children engaging or being exploited with these types of behaviors should start by stopping the sexually explicit material, because that's where it goes.
Okay, so that's where they start. They run for school board, they show up at school board meetings, they state their case, right? But I mean, my first and foremost is take your kids off the front line. Go in for the fight. I'm all for that, but take the kids out of the schools, because you have no control over these, what we'll call rogue teachers with rogue sexual ideas about your children. Hi there. For years I've been talking about how our public schools, our government schools, have been captured by progressives and their progressive ideology, and that they are teaching things that directly contradict the values of millions of Americans, our traditional American values. And that's especially true if you're a Christian family. So for those of you who are worried about the best educational path for your children, I am pleased to announce my new partnership with the Herzog Foundation. They are a trusted source on K through 12 Christian education, and they have a remarkable suite of resources for parents who are thinking about making the switch from government schools to either Christian schools or homeschool. From their online publication of The Lion to their network of podcasts like mine, the Herzog Foundation offers a wide range of advice and information for Christian parents to make the best educational decisions for their children. If you want to learn more about how your family, your faith, your community can flourish through a Christian education, you go to herzogfoundation.com. That's herzogfoundation.com. Thanks for listening. Telios Law and Telios, you've got a nonprofit, Telios Teaches. Tell me about that. What is that about?
So the Telios Teaches site, it's a training affiliate. We do online training for ministries, child safeguarding training, sexual harassment. All of our training, it's the kind of training that you might get in an employment setting, but it's based on the idea that we're made in the image of God and it's scripture based. So the child safety training is from the same perspective. So we try to help organizations create a culture and environment where they get it right. So say you pull your child out and put them in a Christian school, hypothetically, they could be using our training to help the school or the church where you got your kid in Sunday school or that type of thing. So we spend a lot. Go ahead.
Parents who have their children enrolled in, say, a Christian school or a school that would be receptive to this, maybe this is an idea for the parents to bring this to their school and almost as a litmus test. Hey, there's this great training on sexual improprieties and, how to keep our kids safe. What do you think about adopting this at the school? And if the school says, no, we don't need that, then maybe you should take a note of that, right?
Yeah, if you're putting your child in a Christian school, Christian camp, or other groups that work with kids, ask them what their child safety training is. Ask them what their policies are. Ask them if they've heard of the Evangelical Council for Abuse Prevention, which is, by the way, a great resource for parents to go and look. And there are a number of reputable trainings out there, but they should be using something and not just trusting to luck.
Winging it. We follow the Bible. We don't need any other literature.
Well, most of us go to doctors who've been to medical school and read some other literature. And I think there's a lot of areas where God gave us wisdom and common sense to live, as well as the Bible.
Sure. Okay. So Wisconsin school library is now under investigation. Can you talk to me about that?
So yeah, there's several states where they've just been encouraging this disgraceful material that they're exposing kids to. And we've talked about that some. And if the idea is to get your kids sexually active, that works, but that's not what most of us want to see our young children doing. So I say great, they should investigate them. And I think there's a possibility in some of these cases for child abuse charges or civil lawsuits against schools for outrageous behavior and violating parents' constitutional rights. So it will be interesting to see where all this goes as parents fight back. And kudos to the states that are fighting back, states like Texas and Virginia and Florida. So it's not all bad news out there.
It's not all bad news, but I will say, every court case where the parents have sued the school for not teaching the child to read, the parents have lost because the judge inevitably finds that it's not the responsibility of the school to teach the child to read, which is really interesting because they say the children are ours. This is their position now. The children belong to us, and the parents no longer have responsibility, basically. The parents may not take responsibility while the child is in our custody. So the courts are going to find themselves in a bit of a pickle because up until now they have found in favor of the school's lack of responsibility. Now they're going to, I don't know, I don't see this ending well. In fact, I would predict that the courts will basically compromise their stated values to find for the schools in whatever case, because there is so much at risk if they find against the schools.
And unfortunately, I've sued government agencies a few times, and it's very difficult to get the courts to take you seriously. The legal standards are definitely skewed in favor of the government institutions. So, more power to the people doing it, but I agree it's tough to get a good outcome. Constitutionally, it's parents who have the right to direct their children's education. And I'm with you. If the school is failing to educate my child, or worse yet, abusing my child, I am absolutely going to vote with my feet. We homeschooled our kids for part of their growing up. They were in public school part of the time. And our granddaughter just left the public schools to go to a Catholic Christian classical academy. So parents are
Yeah,
going to
I
have to
mean,
step up.
I've gotten to the point where I think that school itself is abusive toward children. And the reason that I say that is just foundationally, children are curious. But the first thing they learn in school is they have to sit down and shut up and stop asking questions. And that if they want to ask a question, they need to ask permission first before they're allowed to ask a question. And I think that's anti-child. So when you take it from that point of view, it's very difficult to make a case on behalf of any school, certainly to me anyway. In this case, we have the schools that are simply exceeding the boundaries of propriety. But there's a big move to shift the goalposts of propriety. And as in the beginning of our conversation today, you said this is grooming. But pretty soon, I think because our culture is moving so rapidly, because we're shifting so rapidly, and because parents really aren't, by and large, parents aren't standing up for their kids. Grooming is going to be a term that becomes innocuous. I think that's the direction that we're headed. And so grooming a child, well, yeah, but the child really enjoys it. So it's not that bad, even though you've seen clear evidence that sexualizing a child prematurely is very detrimental. I don't know. Are you hopeful in the least?
I'm not terribly hopeful that the public schools unchecked will do what they need to do with kids, either in terms of educating them, and the statistics are especially terrible for boys who are not well suited to sitting in the classroom, but in terms of communicating values. So It's been bad for a while. I mean, most parents don't realize that the online digital library system, the EBSCO.com, that both public libraries and school libraries use, kids have been able to navigate to explicit material in that for a long time. And that was actually one of those lawsuits that didn't go forward because of, government protection. So no, I'm not terribly hopeful. I think if we had true school choice, it would bring about a lot of changes because that would actually put free market forces at work, and the schools would have to change to keep people in them. Right now, they don't feel like they have to change, and the teachers unions have so much power that they are actually impacting the ability to hold sex offenders accountable by having them removed from the schools and sent on their merry way without being actually terminated or reported to the next school district. I mean, teachers unions are actually negotiating for provisions like that. And if churches fail to report sex offenders at the rate the public schools fail to report sex offenders, the news media coverage would make the Catholic scandal look like nothing. But they're not reporting what's going on in the public schools. So that's another reason why I'm not terribly optimistic about the public schools. You leave your child in public school for 12 years, and there is a 10% chance they will be sexually abused, verbally or physically, by an educator. That's not even counting by other kids. That's horrific.
Yeah. I mean, 1 in 10 chance that your child will be abused. I wouldn't play those odds, not with my children. I'll tell you, yeah, now that I'm pretty much on the other side, my children are nearly grown. Uh, and I've figured out how easy it is to educate them. I mean, that's become my life's mission, is to empower parents to educate their children themselves. But you help parents navigate some of these waters. So what are we telling people? Go to telioslaw.com for more information.
So Telios Law and Telios teaches, we have some valuable information for parents. We actually have more information targeted at the churches, ministries, Christian schools, Christian camps that you'll be involved in. One great resource, in addition, for parents is look at the Evangelical Council for Abuse Prevention, ecap.net, because that's got great standards for preventing child abuse that parents should be holding all organizations accountable for that. And then, just on a practical level, obviously working with or against the school boards, but making sure your child's phone either does not access the internet at all if they're younger, or in a limited way as they're older. You can have a 10-year-old with a phone where they can literally text and call 10 people and nobody else, and they can't get on the internet. Same with computer protections in the
Right.
household. So I think as parents, as grandparents, we need to take control. The world is not innocent out there, and there are people who are trying to target our kids.
Yeah, very well said. I've long advocated for parents to severely limit children's access to electronics, full stop, certainly access to the internet. And what I say to them is, you're not giving your child access to the internet. You're giving the internet access to your child.
Right.
Because it is a two-way street, and it runs very, very strongly in the opposite direction than what you think. And so it's not so much that your child might accidentally discover something online. It's very much more likely that your child will be targeted immediately when they are available online by nefarious actors. And that's just the truth.
I read a horrifying account. It was a sting operation, and the cop had dressed herself as a 12-year-old girl and put herself out on the internet in a non-sexual way. And in less than 5 minutes, there were grown men showing her, I don't know who all listened to the show, but showing her portions of their anatomy.
Right.
That fast. And that could be one's daughter or granddaughter, or that's, parents have really got to be aware that's out there.
Yeah, my 14-year-old daughter was on Instagram. She's an artist, and so she posted her drawings on Instagram. She came to me and she said, "Mom, I'm going to take myself off Instagram." And I was a little sad because I liked showing off and showing people her drawings. I was like, why? Why are you going to take yourself off? She said they've figured out that I'm a young woman and they've targeted me with pornography and things, and I don't want that. And so she shut it off. Would that every child was so discerning at such a young age, right? And we
Yeah,
just don't know. As the adults, there's no way that we can police all of that. I know on my website, I offer access to a company called Canopy, which will obscure images on your child's device, both incoming and outgoing, and
nice.
texting, text messaging that is inappropriate. They have a scanner, some kind of a scanner that limits the amount of or limits the wording that's available or something. That it scans and somehow it puts on a filter for inappropriate language, or swear words, I suppose, things like that. So there are devices out there, but you're only as safe as you are, right? And the problem
Yeah.
is, for a child specifically, there are just certain things that they can't unsee, unhear, unfeel, unexperience, undo, right? And so it's, caution is the better part of valor.
It is, and kudos to your daughter for having the high character she has, but kudos to you as parents for having talked to her, had the discussions, help her have moral discernment. So she knows the landscape. She understood when she saw it that it was wrong, and that's another whole area parents need to work on is spiritual formation and actually talking to their kids about what the world is
Right.
like.
I discovered that young girls, just her friends in particular, some of her friends were already exposed to things and exposing her to things. And, it wasn't something that I could discern. And it was happening basically right under my nose. So it is very dangerous out there. That's why I would never put a child in school, because once they're in school, you have absolutely no control over what gets to them. Between the teachers and the other students and the internet that they have full access to in school, because even if the school doesn't offer them internet access, all the other students there don't have parents with as much discernment, right? And so you
Yeah.
have no idea when you send your child away from you for 7 or 8 hours every day, to what they are being exposed. You just don't know. All right. Well, I want to thank you for coming on the program. Is there anything that you'd like to leave my listeners with? Any words of advice or words of encouragement?
Yeah, so this has obviously been a dark topic about how much danger kids are in from a lot of nefarious actors out there. And I do want to encourage parents, ministries, everybody who works with kids. What I see in my practice is that when you put the safeguards in place, they actually do work. The ministry reduces the level of abuse that can happen. The parent is able to keep the child safe, or at least more safe. I mean, in life, people are going to get exposed to bad things, but there's a big difference between an incident and a steady diet of abusive material. So don't give up. Keep fighting for your children, your grandchildren, all the kids you know. God made them precious, and we need to hold them precious.
And I will tell you that if you fight for your children, even if they don't necessarily like it at the time, they will appreciate it later.
That is so true.
It's a strange thing, but it is a strange thing when your child comes to you and says, I'm really glad that you did that. I'm sorry that I was so mean about it then, but I'm really glad that that's how it worked out. And it's happened to me on numerous occasions. So you just have to toe the line, folks. Be
Yeah.
strong.
We're the adults.
Theresa Sidebotham, thank you so much for coming on the program. This is the Sam Sorbo Show.
Thank you.